It's all about the trust, baby. It's all about the trust. Hello and welcome. I'm David Greenberg, and I'm the founder and creator of the Freedom Studio, formerly conditionalacceptance.com. And I'd love it if you join me for a few minutes on this video because I'd like to talk to you about trusts. So we're going to talk a little bit about trusts as we walk through this beautiful country house that I'm staying at here in Colombia, South America. Not Colombia, the city, the country. It's kind of a steep hill here, so I'm trying to figure out the best way to walk around here. But you have to walk a little bit at an angle. It's a little bit overcast, but it is a beautiful day. It's nice and cool and crisp. And yeah, let's talk about trusts. When I first got into this movement, if we can call it that, or when I first started becoming really interested in freedom and how to actually implement freedom in a practical way, at that time I didn't know anything about trusts as a legal instrument. But of course, we've all known intuitively about trust as a concept. And so I would argue that they go hand in hand. Okay. All right. I have to jump over a little place there. So trusts go hand in hand with the concept of trust. And that's why I say it's all about the trust. Now, we all know intuitively when you meet someone new, for example, what do? You trust them up to a certain point. I mean, you don't trust them with everything, but you give them a modicum of trust that they're going to not do harm by you and they're going to do right by you, and then you give them an opportunity to essentially prove that. But when it comes to your private affairs and managing your affairs, managing your assets, managing family assets, family wealth, and not to mention managing and protecting and defending your rights, well, that's going to require a higher level of trust, right? It's going to require a higher level of demonstration of trust. And this is where we start to get into the concept of a trust as a legal agreement. And if this is the first time that you're being exposed to this, because like so many important things, this is not being taught in the public education system. Thank you very much, public educators. Thank you for leaving that important information out. Appreciate it. Great job as always, guys. Great job leaving out the most important information. But it's okay, because we're here, this is an educational endeavor and we're here to fill in the gaps. So I'm going to help do that. I'm going to help you fill in the gap. And the first step to that is just raising your awareness that trusts exist. And you're going to want to learn how to both create and manage your private trusts for to protect your assets, and even, I would say, even to conduct commerce privately. Okay, so those are kind of the two main reasons why you might want to set up a trust. Protect your assets, your family assets, and to operate privately in commerce. So you're going to want to learn all about trusts, how to set them up, how to declare them, how to use them, how to administer them, how to hire the appropriate people to administer them for you or co-administer them with you, which will often be the case, that you'll be a co-trustee. We'll talk about the roles in a second. Now, if you want to dive in deep and you want to work directly with me and with other community members, to learn how to create and manage these trusts, then I have something very special for you. We've just launched the Trustee Network. The Trustee Network is a private community. You join through a monthly membership, and we meet privately once a week on Zoom, and there are educational resources. Hey there. There are educational resources, including declarations of trust, sample documents, and pretty much everything that you would need. Everything that you would need to learn how to create and manage your trust. And as the name suggests, it's also a network where you can find other people with professional credentials and with a certain degree of professionalism, with a certain experience and skills, who are trustworthy, who are vouched for, to act as trustees or co-trustees, which you will require because you're not going to be the only trustee. And on the flip side, if you yourself feel like, hey, I have a calling, I want to work professionally, I want to help people do all these things, I want to basically offer my services as a trustee. I want to be a trustee for others, so both ways. Then the Trustee Network is where it's at, because we're going to do high-level, concierge-level introductions. We're going to help with the vetting process. Everybody goes through an interview, several probably. We're going to create profiles, private profiles, where we can help to facilitate the matching of people. And of course, we're going to provide ongoing education so you can keep leveling up your skills, keep learning what you need to learn in order to keep performing as a trustee at a higher and higher level. In other words, keep improving your skill set. So that's the Trustee Network. You can find out more through the main website, and I'll provide a link somewhere below this video in the show notes or in the comments or both, so you can go explore that. There is a 7-day free trial to join, and I did it that way because I figured that way you could have a chance to come to one of our weekly meetings and decide if it's a good fit or not before you actually make the commitment to subscribe. So the Trustee Network is where it's at. You're warmly invited to join. Come check it out. Take advantage of the 7-day free trial. Come to one of the meetings, see if it's a good fit or not. I'll provide the link below. Speaking of the website, we're still running off of the original website, conditionalacceptance.com. However, we are making a lot of progress in terms of setting up the new website. Our team has been working very hard to set it up, and I think we're about a third of the way done, and we definitely want to get it done before the end of January. So we'll be launching the new website pretty soon. But in the meantime, you can check it out. So what is a trust exactly as a contract? And why is it so important? Well, a trust is basically a contract or an agreement that has three parties. At least three parties. The first party, which is typically called the grantor or the creator. There are other terms too, including settler with an O or trustor with an O. This is the individual or individuals who actually create the trust. Now, how do they do that? They typically would have some property that they are holding, that they own, some property that they have that they now want to put into a trust. Now, why would they want to do that? Why would you want to put property into a trust? Well, it's very simple. You want to do that because you want to put that property under stewardship, under management, so that it can serve for the benefit of some other party. And that other party is called, the beneficiary. Or beneficiaries, because there can be more than one. So the grantor or the creator says, I want to set aside this property, these assets, these resources for the benefit of these folks over here. Or the beneficiary could also be an organization. It could be another trust. It could be, it could be even a corporation. It could be a different entity. Okay, whether it's an actual man or woman, men or women, children, or organizations, it can really be any other entity. So, but that other entity, whether a man, woman, corporation, or otherwise, or other trust, he, she, it is going to benefit from the use of or some derivative of the assets that were put into the trust by the grantor. An important thing to note is that when the grantor, one of the things that happens when the grantor puts this property or these assets into the trust is the grantor is explicitly relinquishing ownership of those assets. That's very important to understand. The grantor is relinquishing ownership of those assets. So how does the ownership and or the title, as it's called in law, how does that shift? Well, the beneficiaries, they have what's called beneficial title or beneficial interest. And that means they get to benefit from. So if it was a car that was put into the trust, one of the benefits might be that the beneficiary gets to drive the car. Okay? But they don't own it, not in the sense that you and I are thinking of, and neither does the grantor. So then the question becomes, well, who owns the car? Who manages it? Who makes the monthly payments? Who makes sure the maintenance is done so that the beneficiaries can continue to enjoy using that vehicle even though they're not responsible for the maintenance, the payments, and all the other things, right? Just to use an example. Well, the folks that have that responsibility are called trustees. And the trustees, they're the ones that have what's called legal title to the property of the trust. Legal title in this case means, so you see what happened? The ownership was split in two. So the grantor, let's say they had a vehicle, privately owned. The grantor had full title to that vehicle. So they had beneficial title, means they could use it, drive it around, enjoy it. And they had legal title, which meant that they held the title to the car. They were responsible for it, making the payments, maintenance. They had the right to sell the car if they wanted to, etc. They had the right to modify it, holding that full title. So once they put the vehicle into this trust, the title was split. The grantor relinquished all title, and that's important. And now the trustees, and there usually is more than one trustee, they have what's called legal title. So they have all the responsibilities, but really none of the privileges. It's not necessarily none, but they usually don't have beneficial interest unless they're also a beneficiary. And we'll talk about overlapping roles in a second. But because the title is split, the trustees are now the ones who have pretty much all the responsibility. They need to make sure that the car, for example, the vehicle in this example, continues to operate correctly, is paid for, has the proper maintenance, has the proper insurance, etc., etc. If anything happens, they need to deal with it. They may have the right, for example, to trade the car in for a new one or sell it and buy another one, as long as the trust specifies that they have the right to do that. So they could have broad powers or less broad powers. It just depends on how you set up the trust. Okay? So let's keep going with this example. So a question arises, especially if you're new to trusts, is what happens if the grantor changes their mind? Can they take it back? You say, well, oops, I didn't mean to do that. I'm taking it all back. I want my vehicle back. Well, the answer is yes and no, and it depends on the type of trust that you create. If you create what's called an irrevocable trust, and this is generally the kind that we recommend because it provides a higher level of protection under the law by virtue of being irrevocable. The irrevocable of it means that you can't take it back. Now, the declaration of trust, which is the trust indenture, which is the written document that specifies all the rules of the trust and all the duties, responsibilities, privileges of everyone involved, could provide allow for certain provisions that would allow, for example, the trustees to sell the vehicle and buy another one or make other changes. So there can be broad powers within the trust. But if it's irrevocable, the grantor cannot take it back. Okay, see how powerful that is. So that also means that when you set up an irrevocable trust, and I would again suggest that most of your trusts, if not all of them, are going to be irrevocable. You want to give some good thought to not only are you really ready to put that property in, but also make sure that you write your trust in a way that you can give the trustees enough power that if they need to make certain changes, that they don't have their hands tied. Okay? So you want to be very explicit in your trust indenture, very detailed. In the trustee network that we run, the typical trust declarations are 25 to 30 pages, and they may actually in some cases end up being longer just to cover all these scenarios. Not necessarily, but it's better to be thorough in these cases. So another question that might come up is, well, David, you mentioned there's 3 parties. Well, can one man or woman serve more than one of those roles? Can I be a grantor and a trustee? Can I be a grantor, a trustee, and a beneficiary? For an irrevocable trust, you could take on 2 of those roles, but you can't be all 3. Because if you were all 3, as you can tell, if you think through it logically, you would essentially defeat the purpose of the trust of splitting title and ownership. When I say that, you should be thinking in your mind, or you probably will, I need to hire trustees that are very trustworthy. I need to work with people that I can count on. And that's why the relationship side is so important. The professionalism, the credentials, and the ongoing training, so that you know that you are working with trustees that are trustworthy based on their track record, they're professional, they have a great skill set, and they have some way to get ongoing education and support so they can continue to improve. So you can see how important that is. And that's something, again, that we're going to be dealing with a lot in the trustee network. So you're definitely going to want to consider jumping in and joining us there if this is a direction that you want to head. So yes, you could wear more than one role, but you want to be very careful with that. And the more you can split off those roles, the more protection that you can create. Okay? Now, it's not a zero risk experience, which is why, again, the vetting of your trustees, their professionalism, their background, and as well as the ongoing support can be helpful. In some cases, a trustee doesn't have to, I forgot to mention this, just like a beneficiary, trustees can also be corporations or other trusts. So you may or may not have heard of a trust management company. You may or may not have heard of that concept, a trust management company. So that's a great example where you have an organization, such as a corporation, that is specifically set up to manage to act as a trustee for a trust. And because it's an entire organization, you now have several benefits. You have a leadership structure. You usually have more resources, more people involved. So that if there's an issue with one individual, it doesn't bring down the entire, doesn't necessarily impact the entire organization, or can have less of an impact. And also, as an organization, that trust management company can pool resources so it can actually do the job of managing the trust more effectively, more efficiently. So we are here at the Freedom Studio, we are in the process of studying how we can set up a trust management company and be able to offer that as a service. And that's something that I hope to do over the next couple of months, at least to start to move that forward. I don't know how long it's going to take to make that happen, but that's something we're exploring and very interested in. But in the meantime, I just wanted to put that out there as a concept so you can be aware that in many cases, it would be an organization, whether it be another trust or a corporation, or even a partnership that's going to essentially act as trustee rather than just one man or woman. However, you can also have trustees acting individually in the sense that they are signing up directly as trustees, not through an organization. That's also perfectly valid. So you get there's a lot of flexibility. And all of this comes, by the way, in case you're wondering where this all comes from, trust law is a very high level of law. It's very, it's basically it's very close to natural law. And the trusts that we set up are very aligned with, are very much most of them are based in common law. So they're what's called non-statutory. In other words, they're not on the public side, they're private. And the right to create all these trusts is very simple. It just comes from your natural right to enter into contracts, to create unlimited contracts. That's even mentioned in the Constitution, the unlimited right to contract. So these are private contracts, okay? And because they're private, they don't have to be registered. It's not like a corporation, like an LLC, where you have to file with the Secretary of State. With trust, you don't have to do that. Now, when you interface with the public side, in other words, if a trust is going to have, for example, a bank account, which many of them will, then yes, you will have to file certain documents that provide evidence that the trust exists. But the actual trust itself, you would not ever share that declaration publicly. Well, there might be exceptions to that, but you are not obliged to do that. If you did, it would just be of your own election, and probably only for certain circumstances. Is this making sense? So a trust is a three-party agreement. The grantor has some property that they want to basically set aside to be enjoyed or used and enjoyed and benefited from some other party, which is the beneficiary. And then you have the trustees. They're the ones that are going to receive that property and manage it for the benefit of the beneficiaries. So generally the trustees are the ones that have most of the control, but they still don't have full title. They still have only legal title. And they're still obligated to follow the rules of the trust, the declaration of trust, which is the contract. Okay? So I know I'm throwing a lot of terms at you guys. It's a lot of stuff. This is kind of just an introductory video. We're going to be talking a lot more about trusts. It's fascinating. Creation itself, you can think of it as a trust. You can think of creation as a trust where the creator of this realm, and this is not a religious statement, it's just an observation that this is a created realm. So the creator of this realm decided to set aside this realm and the resources it has, the plant life, the animal life, the other resources, for our benefit. for our benefit. So we are the beneficiaries of this realm, of this creation. And then the trustees are those among us who have taken it upon themselves, and we could discuss how they became the trustees, by basically taking it upon themselves to steward the realm, which means to help protect it and its resources. And there are those who say, and I think there's probably truth to this, that there are trustees that are probably non-human, meaning they're not just those among us. So there's probably both men and women that act as trustees in this realm, but there are probably greater spiritual forces or non-human forces that are also acting in the realm as trustees, and we're just not directly aware of them, and that they are doing their part to protect the realm and to maximize its use for our benefit as the beneficiaries. So that's just a theory. It's not something I'm not going to be able to prove that. It's just a way to look at reality as a trust. Now, I forgot to mention that the trusts that we've been talking about have mostly been what are called express trust. An express trust means it's actually written down, so there's a declaration of trust. There's also a concept of an implied trust. And an implied trust means that there is a trust, meaning there's all the parties and the agreement that we talked about, but it's not written down. It's not written down. So almost any time we have an exchange between individuals, there is essentially an implied trust. And so if you think about a lot of your interactions, you don't necessarily declare a trust every time, but there's an implied trust. And there's implied trust. And again, that word is kind of a double meaning, because there is trust, because you have to trust others to do their part to make sure that everything keeps moving forward, or the transaction is completed, or the assets are protected and maintained for the benefit of the beneficiaries. So trust, there's always trust, and that's a currency. Okay? So you're going to be able to learn a lot more about trust as you continue your study. It's not something that you can necessarily learn in one day. You definitely want to commit yourself to an ongoing process of education and learn how you can use trust to protect your assets. Again, things like your property, your physical property, your intellectual property, your family and family assets, and your business concerns, your commercial concerns, whether it be property again, or just operating in commerce, selling a product or a service in the market. You can also set up a trust or trusts that can actually own your LLC. So for example, recently I set up a trust, and then I set up a new LLC, and instead of me being the managing member and the owner of the LLC, it's the trust. So I'm one of the trustees, so I still have control of that entity through my trusteeship, and also through being hired by the LLC as a CEO. You can be hired directly by the LLC, but I'm not the owner or managing member of that LLC, and that's a big distinction. Okay, and that provides a greater layer of protection versus having these single member LLCs where you're still the managing member or still the owner, the beneficial owner, so you still have all the liability. Okay, so trustees are protected in exchange for their duty. They get a maximum level of protection from liability, and that's usually written directly into the trust indenture. So if you want to learn more about this, I would warmly invite you to join our new trustee network. It's called the Trustee Network. I'll have a link below the video where you can go and explore that. We do a 7-day free trial, and that way you can come to one of our weekly meetings and check it out before you make the commitment. We do meet once a week, Monday, I believe it's Mondays at 5 p.m. Eastern. And you're going to be able to meet with me and with other members, and we're going to literally roll up our sleeves and get to work and set up these trusts. So it's a very hands-on, practical education. It's not just theoretical. And as part of being a member, you're also going to get access to all the back-end course material, and it's going to be dependent on what you're trying to do. So if you need to create a trust, you're going to get access to you can access the trust templates and the how to set up your trust. If you want to hire a trustee, you're going to get access to those resources. If you want to be a trustee, whether for your own trust or someone else, you're also going to get ongoing education in terms of how to operate as a trustee. So you're going to get all of those things. That's how powerful this is. So this is separate from the other membership that we have at the Freedom Studio. That other membership is going to continue, and we'll continue to talk about these topics and other topics related to sovereignty and financial freedom. However, everything that's specific to trust is going to be in the trustee network. So if that's what you're specifically looking to learn, you're going to want to jump in and join the trustee network. So as always, I appreciate you, and let's leave it at that. I'll probably have some other announcements coming up soon, but it was great to see you again, to get back on here. Comment below the video if you have any questions about it, and I will see you very soon. Take care.